Hello. Hello. We're here. We're live. We're on.
We are. There's a little red thing that says so.
So I see.
Goodness me. So, so hello. Do you want to kick off and explain what this panel is for the people who,
Yeah. Well, I've nice and conveniently got the a screen behind me with the blurb in it, so we can just make sure everybody is in the right panel. I was just do. But yes, playing RPGs playing role playing games for different audiences. We'll read out a live and remixed version of this. Ed, right? Ed can tell you all about where he writes about games. That's fine, and also a Star Wars connection because there is one. I can tell you likewise my own. I just GM stuff because I do writing, and this is a nice break for me. And tabletop gaming has been one of the things getting me through this year quite nicely, because you can do this with your old gaming group in Manchester, even when you're in London, while you have setups such as these. So that's lovely. I've apparently also included the Student National Role Playing Championships, which we're getting on with. The question, Del will do an introduction in a second because I'll pass you all on, but I'll just read the last bit, which is: how does playing in an RPG change when you venture beyond your friends and your kitchen table? So we must discuss our experiences. So, in the accidental Brave New Word special that we have, I'm Russ.
I'm Del.
And I'm Ed. Hello everyone.
Right, we're all in. Tell us about your gaming stuff.
Shall I go ahead? So I'm right. So like the panel's sort of supposed to be about like different audiences and different ways of playing games. So I'm currently, since lockdown started, I'm now running 4 games sort of. So I'm running D&D, which is like a homebrew, where the players are fantastic voyaging their way through an actual dragon. That's kind of fun. They've been plucked out of different dimensions, thrown into it, shrunk, and then injected into a dragon, discovered a horrendous conspiracy, pulled out of the dragon, and then when granted their wish to go home, gone, and hesitated long enough for me to scatter them across the plains, and that's an excuse for me to throw any nonsense I want at a player base. So that's fun. I'm doing...
In a space with a dragon?
Yeah, in a space with a dragon. Using the D&D cosmology, so it was a draconic demigod, so I could use its demi-plane. Stuff that no one cares about except massive D&D nerds. But rather than just going, oh, well, they're shrank, I was like, no, we'll do it so it's like archetypes and builds and that sort of thing. I'll write it all down at some point and put them up or some such. No one will read it, but it was fun. It's fun to do, and it's a nice mix of experience of players. People who wanted to play a game on Mondays. I'm also doing a vanilla D&D Icewind Dale out of the Icewind Dale book, which is just brilliantly written. And on like Thursdays, I'm just like, if you say, I mean, I don't want to. There's enough in the book that I don't actually have to try. It doesn't stop me, and it doesn't stop me from improvising stuff and making stuff up and having them attacked by owls and being weird. But there's that. I'm playing a Powered by the Apocalypse game. We were playing Legacy. We're now playing Masks. I'm playing that with a bunch of UK authors, which is lovely. I'll try not to name drop. And I've just seen Carol mention that, yes, indeed, on Monday nights we had a player character take on Toragos Dalefist, who's one of the canonic... He's Triple H, essentially.
Awesome.
But he's Triple H who works for the Tiamat forces of evil, if you say what I mean, like a Cobra Commander version of
Triple H there.
Triple H, basically. Legion of Doom style. And we just had this player character who's just like, yeah, no, I can do that. And leaps into the arena, because they were on Machinist, it's Robot Wars, and leaps into the arena and basically almost gets turned into paste within one round, but did really well. So Lives, because it's Triple H, and he's just like, well, that was a good blow. So I'm gonna put you on boil for a while and come back in several levels time, and we'll have a proper fight. So which is exactly what that sort of arrogant evil would do. Which also means that I didn't get to punish a player for doing a cool thing. And this is not what I'm started talking about my own campaign. I'm really sorry. The actual game I'm here to talk about is the Star Wars Force Majeure podcast. And I have to say, thank you very much to Adam, who is the guy who's responsible for Star Wars Force Majeure podcast.
Hello, Adam.
Hi, Adam. I just GM one half of. We do 2 seasons. He does a game, I do a game, so he can play and I can play. And he does all the editing. He does all the various bits and pieces, and it's very different to all the other games I've just talked about because you run your role playing game, and you run your role playing game for about an hour. 45 minutes of that is content for the podcast. 50 minutes of it is people going, I can't find my dice. But it's weird because there's been situations like we've had a do-over at one point because as a GM, I've just been like, okay, and then this happens, and we'll kind of montage it so you can all go home and have your pizza, sort of thing, which is what you normally do as a GM. You'd like, here, you've done a really cool adventure thing. Let's not do the bit where you run away from the stormtroopers because that's boring. Because it's a podcast and that's an extra episode, you then go back and do that bit because the listeners want to listen to it. So you record that on a different day because the players are knackered, so the players don't want to do it, and you don't want to do it to the players because they'll stop having fun. But you also want to say, at this point, this happens. So you kind of, one of the weird things I've learned about recording for a podcast is not only do you have a perfect memory of your campaign, not only do people, like, you can't have inconsistencies. You have to listen to your own show because there's other people listening and they'll be like, yeah, you said he was 6 foot tall, not 7 foot tall. And you're like, oh, God, it's a rookie. No.
The fans know the story better than you do, kind of thing.
Yes, and they have their own theories, and some of them are better than yours.
That sounds terrifying.
It's really fun.
I suppose that's quite interesting as well, because if you're playing a game, but for a podcast, that means that you, like you said, you have to have that constant thing of, is this entertaining in the back of your mind? And actually the players are no longer the people you're playing for. It's like for your audience as well.
Yeah. So does it feel like you flip? So does it feel like that as a player to have that dynamic flipped as well?
So because essentially Adam is so we rotate a kind of production role. So Adam's basically a player, but he's also the producer. When Adam's running it, Mikey, kind of one of the other players, kind of picks up the kind of production consultant, and this has happened organically. We didn't sit down and go, oh, but it's kind of the thing that's happened is you end up with, we give each other notes to see how we can do it better.
Right.
Sometimes. So there was one session where we had essentially gone through massive trauma as a group and dealt with it in different ways. And one character, I don't want to give you spoilers for Force Majeure, you should listen to the podcast, it's really cool. But one character had basically gone, I'm really ugly inside. Here are my issues, if you see what I mean. And the rest of the party were like, whoa, dude. And that was 45 minutes of us going, whoa, what is going? And like, it's great radio because it's people improving a kind of, an actual trauma. On the table in a normal tabletop game, that might have been your session, if you see what I mean, and you might have stopped. Right. Because you have those breaks, you can kind of pace yourself better, and it becomes a little bit of improv. It also becomes a little bit more. Like we do have one of our players, Ross, is very much more. He's more used to games like Power of the Apocalypse, so he's much more to a more structured sort of game, and that kind of means that he ends up giving it a beat, if you see what I mean. Because every once in a while he'd be like, "Let's go and kill some stormtroopers," and we'd be like, "Oh yeah, let's stop talking about our charmer and actually get on with the plot," sort of thing. But yeah, there's a these are the sort of panels where you really don't want to talk about your character for too long because it's just like no one wants that.
On the other hand, inherently by this panel's very nature, you kind of have to for a bit. So we're given a free pass to do that. On that note, Dale, what are you playing or running at the moment? And tell us about your.
My experience of RPGs is very, very different in that I kind of grew up in Somerset, in the middle of nowhere, in like the 90s. And in the 90s and early 2000s, if you were interested, well, to be honest, our only knowledge of RPGs was Dungeons and Dragons exists. But at that time, it was before kind of you had wide usage of the internet. We definitely were still dial up for a long time in my town. You couldn't. It wasn't possible. And you had to know somebody who could explain it to you and go through it with you, which we didn't. And also when it's the 90s and you're like, "Hi parents, I want to play this game, but in order to play, you have to buy me a book and it's £40." And obviously £40 for a book is steep, but in the 90s, early 2000s, very steep, completely unjustified. And when they don't trust that you're not going to play for 2 weeks and then stop, they just wouldn't buy it. So I've always had this complete envy of RPG players who have like a history, because I don't. And then because of the world as it currently is, gestures everywhere, one of my friends was like, it would be basically this. One of my friends was like, "I really want to do an RPG. There's one I found, but I don't think, I think you guys would be interested because you'll get where I'm coming from." And I play something called Good Society, and it's a cooperative RPG where you are essentially writing a Jane Austen novel. It's amazing. Granted, I'm me, so I was like, "Maybe with zombies?" And they were like, "No, not the first one, Del." No. But it's really, and especially I think for the current world, it's so good just once a week sitting with my friends and creating this Jane Austen thing where nothing particularly dramatic has to happen to create drama. And the whole premise of it is that, yeah, you together are writing a book. And so you have, it's like broken into a format. So you start with a chapter, and a chapter will involve an event, and they're called visitations. So you have an event which has to involve as many characters as possible, and then bits where they have chats afterwards, like one of them's gone to someone's house, or they meet up on a walk, or they see each other in town. And then after that, but after the big event, you basically go through a reputation phase where you're like, has any of the events affected your character's reputation? How has it done so? If you have 3 negative reputation things over the course of the whole story, that leads to a bigger problem. If you have 3 positives, that leads to something good happening to your character. And then you go into the rumors and scandals phase, which is where basically you go around twice and everyone either can create a rumor, or if they like the sound of another rumor that someone has created, they can spread it. And so once it's spread, you're going with the assumption, therefore, that people are hearing this idea and it's something in the back of people's minds. Because in a Jane Austen novel, obviously your reputation was everything. Your reputation is also based on like what your family background is. But rumor and scandal will have a massive effect on how everyone reacts to you and works with you and things. And then you go into epistolary, which is where your characters write each other letters before the next event happens. And it's so good. It's wonderful. It's absolutely brilliant.
That sounds amazing.
Really interesting, yeah.
Yeah. We've kind of, because one of the things that we do, because my friend who runs it, her husband does play a lot of kind of more sci-fi and fantasy RPGs. So he was like, while a Jane Austen novel no drama can create drama. He was like, I do think it would be good to introduce kind of elements of chance. So whenever there's like they're playing cards, we'll use like some dice generators to create to basically actually play games. So there is that chance element. We don't know what the outcome is going to be. One of my friends went crazy and challenged one of our other friends to a duel at one point, and we were like, well, now we have to look up what the rules of duels were in the 1700s in England, so here's for that one. But her husband wrote, again, like created a dice system of working out how that duel went ahead and like what the damage was and everything. And there was genuinely a bit where we were like, Archie is gonna kill Felix off, like what's happening? Please, let's not kill Felix off. That's not how we want this to go. But it's wonderful. It's so good.
I'm reminded a little of, there was a play-by-mail, probably still around, called Enguarde, where it was pre-revolutionary France. And you had to balance conspicuous consumption with actually having money, with reputation and all the rest of it. But the thing that really frustrated me was it was play-by-mail. And what I really wanted to do was just sit there. This is pre-Zoom, this is dial-up era sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I kind of would want to play that again now, because like I could just like dial someone up and go, you scandalize my play, or you know, or you say I'm sleeping, or you know, do the actual role play a bit, and prompted by, because Enguarde did the thing where you built reputations and you wrote plays and you spent money and you went on campaigns if you were a musketeer and sort of thing. And I loved that bit of it, but got really frustrated that I couldn't actually step into the shoes of the person I was playing.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I hadn't come across it before. I was for a second there, I was wondering if it was going to be one of those things where I could say, well, closest thing I can think of right now is the 7th Sea game, where and yeah, to an extent that's still true. I mean, you know, if you want to, but that's more of a traditional sort of sit down, roll dice, and be cinematic kind of.
7th Sea really wants to be something else. I find the system really wants to be, because it uses like tarot as shorthand and this sort of thing. It makes its own version of tarot cards and then uses it as a shorthand. And then it's just a traditional 90s role playing game. So hang on, Russell, you're the one who's done competitive role playing. How the heck does that work? What?
When you say competitive role playing, I don't have England caps or anything like that. It's more this is the point where this is the point where I suppose I attempt to explain what I can remember of the student role playing nationals, and still technically I'm one of the Manchester Met veteran team, so I can join that anytime I like. But yes, we have veterans teams now. This is what we have done since I started. Right, okay. So a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, pretty much Sunderland 1995 would be. Yeah, you see, it's the same opening crawl, isn't it? But sure. How far do we want to take this back? Because this is right when. Do we do this from the point that I rolled my first D6 with a character sheet, or do we?
We old. We've been doing this.
Sorry, pardon.
So well, yeah, I might as well start there. I mean, I'd gone to my first attempt at uni with no previous actual role playing tabletop role playing experience. What I had done, the closest I'd come was during sixth form. We got there were a couple of copies of various D&D adventures, and other people were playing, but the games were full, and I didn't quite manage to get round to it in whatever way it was. But I picked up like a copy. It was back then. It was one of the Oriental Adventures things. I really liked the setting, and I really liked the look of this. And then I kind of want to play this now, and then never got round to it. And then you fast forward to me falling out of clearing in uni, and ended up sort of, okay, I don't know anybody here. Clubs and societies, fair day, let's go. So joined up. So yeah, just joined all the queues there, and as fate would absolutely have it, ended up gravitating towards the cluster of tables I knew I was probably always going to end up with. So yeah, join the Rock Society. That's easy. Speak to the Live Role Playing Society, who were also there, who explained, and I was like, "What is this?" So it gets explained to me, and I'm sort of, this sounds really interesting, and I don't know what happened between. So we've got this. Roll, this roll of several bits of gaffer tape, and on a morning after a heavy night out drinking at a nightclub, you too can go to the top of this hill and batter the crap out of one of your mates. To get to so you're telling to the other part of. So you're telling me I can play a musician? Yeah, okay. So that totally happened. So I had this. So yeah, we had this once a month. I felt like a goddamn rock star, because I kind of was. And it was wonderful. But yeah, all of this happened whilst also next door, because although there was no discount package for joining all three societies, take the game society, which was board games and again copies of rule books tantalizingly left on the table for me to look at and go, this looks interesting. Yeah, I want to give this a go. Happened. So we got into that. So yeah, my first, I can tell you, because I remember my first game was GURPS, which was sort of which we did as a futuristic detective agency thing. I am currently playing an entirely different GURPS game, where I am doing Infinite Worlds with Martin, who may be watching. So hi. But yes, this is a neatly constructed tangent.
Okay.
There was a reason.
I was wondering when we were getting to the bit where
we were getting to. No, there was a reason for it. There was a reason for all this. This here is the background. This is the origin story. This is how I ended up now owning a far more expensive set of dice and all that sort of thing. So what happened? Yeah. So what happens is one day we're at these. I'm at one of the two societies, and somebody says, "We need a team for the Students Role Playing Nationals." And I was like, "Well, okay. Well, what do I need to do? Do I are there qualifiers?" Also liking various other sports, but not being any good at them. So it was just like, well, yeah. What do I have to do? Oh no, well, just chuck us the cash. We'll book the halls and we'll sort it out. What does this involve? Will you get to role play all weekend, and it's basically a very big party? Sure, why not? So yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. The couple of the student role playing nationals I went to were generally didn't spend a great deal of time sober, and that
bit gnarly.
So this sort of half answers your question. Big breakfast, couple of coffees, and a hangover. Let's just tabletop and see what happens. Let's just tabletop and see what happens. You give me a character sheet. You tell me what I'm. We sign up for a particular type of game. We know roughly what we're expecting in terms of genre. What we don't know is exactly, what our adventure is going to be at any given time. Sometimes we don't know what vague system we're playing, and sometimes we don't even know exactly where the setting is, because there's all sorts of things like systemness. So you can go from anywhere to, we know this is going to be Vampire the Masquerade, to this is a lucky dip, bring it on, of which did most of these things. So yeah, that's how I got into it. And how I ended up GMing for it was a very simple one. When I moved from Sunderland to Manchester Met, I possibly explained, and we had a lovely slogan on the back of our gaming society every time we went. We took T-shirts to the Nationals. Yes, it's T-shirts. This is proper thing. And they'd say we'd have a little tour thing on the back, and we'd tell you where we'd been. And the last one was the next year with Manchester Met. Critical part of this. As a general rule, like Eurovision, winner hosts next year.
Oh,
so next year.
Okay.
So the one that was always next year on the T-shirt with Manchester Met was when hell freezes over, because there was a running gag that we would always, at best, come second in this tournament, because we do whatever we did in our games, but of course all of the points were totted up for every member of the team. So it's an overall team placing rather than an individual thing. And one year hell froze over.
Yay! I mean, DiCaprio had to win at some point.
yeah. Not an MMU for that, whenever that was. Straight thought about tournament style pick play, that sort of thing, is D&D specifically does, and I think a few other games do, but D&D do it because it's the biggest one. They do organized play, and you can get like DM guilds, adventure guild packs, and they've been doing it since 3rd edition, where you get like a pre-boiled adventure to run with goals and this sort of thing, which is similar to tournament style play. But what I find fascinating is, and I'm sure someone in the comments will correct me, is that you can do the adventure and then the DM will give you a certificate at the end that says you have found this magical item. You can, and then you can take that certificate and you can go to a different DM who's running another organized play and like use that item and use that character.
Oh wow!
And that made no sense to me until I realized that D&D is American. And if I want to go to a major city, I can literally get in the car and I can be there in 15 minutes. And my entire life, I've never been more than 45 minutes away from a large collection of people. Sometimes I've not had the money to get there, but I'm European. I can just do that. If I'm American, sometimes it's 6 hours drive to the game store. So yeah, I get why that exists, and the consequences. And this is where I'm going with this. The consequences of this is this: there's an American actor called Joe Manganiello.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who I remember mostly from Alcide, who played Alcide in True Blood, but also, but also there was Magic Mike and various other things.
He's in like lots, isn't he? He's one of those ones where you know his face.
He's a massive D&D nerd.
Yeah, he's on Big Bang Theory. His celebrity game thing that he runs, like, is the stuff of legend so much that Big Bang Theory were like, we've got to get on this. Like, there's an episode about it where the girls just accidentally find themselves playing and are like, yay!
So he had a character called Arkan the Cruel that he took from LA Game Group to LA Game Group, the same character sheet. Just bobbed it around from game to game, ran loads of games himself, but when there was a pickup game available, he would play this character. And he did that with lots of other different characters, but when he had the opportunity to play this character, and then he appears on Critical Role, the Phenomena web streaming thing, and does this amazing thing. And then D&D are like, right, okay, the Wizards of the Coast are like, okay, we'll write you into canon.
Yeah.
And that's like, that to me is just like you play so hard and so often and so everywhere that your character becomes part of the lore of
That's
that
amazing.
Game.
And who knew a bunch of professional actors are really entertaining when they play D&D and have often been playing D&D before we knew them as professional actors. So it's wonderful. Yeah, sorry, just to quick, just a
There's
quick.
people and they are talking.
Yes, we've had a couple of comments, but yeah, so just going back to one, which was about how you get competitive role playing as far as the nationals go, and yeah, there's a dead on one here, which is basically you mark people for good role playing, not playing to win. So yeah, just go do your game, have a laugh. Try and play the character you're given. Bring your unique take to it and see what happens. You know,
I think that's good. I think like that thing of it should be more about the game and stuff as opposed to just trying to win the competition. Like in Good Society, at the start of it, when you're building things up, you start with a desire, and it's essentially what you are trying to work towards within the novel. What is your character trying to gain in all of this? What is their motivation? But there are bits you can't aggressively push that thing because it just doesn't work. And if you're trying to be like, well, I just want to sort out my desire and complete it and get to the end, it would be like, I think everyone else would just be like, why is Fanny being so odd?
and of course, there's always the worrying thing that should be in the back of every player's head that a DM can drop a cow on your head at any time with no reason or explanation. Probably shouldn't, but can.
Because Good Society is literally all improv as well. So it is about chatting. It's about talking as your character and having the discussions your characters would have, because that was such a big part of Jane Austen's writing, was the actual discourse between people. So if you're if you're trying to unnaturally get to an end point sorry, that was my rabbit. Just, I don't know, falling off of things. I'm sorry.
Carry on.
Yeah, anyway. But yeah, in conversation, you can't really push towards an end goal naturally. People think you're weird. Like if you're trying to push something on them in a conversation, they will just stop talking to you and talk to someone else, or like move that conversation round. So it should be about just playing the game. It should never be about how do we get the win.
Yeah, it becomes a business meeting at that point if you're having that kind of conversation.
I think most modern role-playing systems, and certainly Force Majeure uses Force and Destiny, which is the FFG Star Wars system, has a bunch of character notes that are purely role-play, and you can turn to the dark side if you essentially, if one of your character traits is anger, and you're not angry, you don't use an opportunity to be angry. That can be a bad thing because you are an angry person, so you're just suppressing that sort of thing. And that works because it stops the player from playing the game and allows the character to be part of the story. I've had moments when I've been a player in Force Majeure where I have a character and I'm like, as an Ed, what I should do is this. As my character Oberon, he's going to ask it if it wants to surrender, even though that's suicide.
Wait, you have a Star Wars character called Oberon as well?
Really? There's more than one?
There sure is. Three. Well, there's three technically because I played two of them. I play one of them, and the other one's an NPC in two concurrent games that are running.
I mostly called him Oberon, because he's broadly based on Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender. As my character note, which is another cool thing that you can do with role-playing games, where you just go, right, I'm going to steal this character trait and this character trait, and this character trait, and if I ever get stuck, I can say, what would Zuko do? He'd storm off and call everyone idiots. I'll do that then.
Whereas I just also auditioned Alexander Siddig and say, right, okay, there you go. This is another character image.
But that's another thing, is because there's a whole thing of like, create your character. What do they look like? And it's like, I can't draw for toffee. I'm going on to Google, and there we go.
One
Yeah.
of my friends she asked us to describe how we see our characters in our heads so she could draw them. She loves drawing things. And I was just like, all I could see was the picture from my card that had my desire on. So it's like, looks like this. Draw that.
So we have a relevant question I can see here, Rory M. Are you ever concerned that you might get to meet one of the characters you've created, and they want you to explain why their life got so messed up?
It wasn't
So-
me.
Yeah,
I
no.
was fighting for you, mate.
So I play a game. So I play Legacy with it's now Masks, but it's powered by the Apocalypse, which is a system that you work out your relationships with each other, the other characters. And one of the things that's gone with there is the part of the Apocalypse games I play with writers and authors. So you get that kind of with Legacy specifically, you play an entire family and then you pull a character out for
Right,
that
okay.
adventure. And then 30 years might pass and that rebel character is now the leader of that clan and so on, and that's how the game. I played a bunch of genetically engineered badges because of course I did.
Yeah, because of course.
Like UK badges.
UK badges.
UK badges. They're the best badges.
They were created as psychological care badges. Gavin Gav Smith played a bunch of Ninja Assassins, which was kind of fun. And Liz Miles played a bunch of essentially automata that were once for funfair and now just want to go to paradise. That might end the world though, so and they don't understand why they're creepy, even though they're like park automata. They think they're people. And they're like, "Hello, friend," and everyone's like, "Yeah." Anyway, I was getting to that point. You actually end up having conversations with yourself as different characters because you're wearing different masks. So you actually get that situation where, and all the badges were named after the batches they were in. So you had like Friday lasts forever, Monday always happens, and they had names like that because I thought it was fun. And the end Friday and Monday were meant to be this kind of Xena and Gabrielle style adventuring pair, and they just had a moment, and I was just like, "I'm really sorry I've done this to these characters who I've made everyone else care about." But it was fine.
I know about them and I'm not playing.
But there's always that kind of element to that sort of thing. But I think it's a bit self-indulgent.
Also in their head now, thanks to those particular badges. Or was it just me?
Do you get guilt when you see badges?
Well, we've stopped playing that campaign, but I did have a moment of going. We got condescended to by some colonists, and they were like, "We are sentient beings, and suddenly like shifting gears, and just this response from the GM who was just like, "Yeah, don't fuck with the badges," So that kind of moment. But what I like about Legacy is it builds those structures in, so you by playing. I'm going to rephrase that. By interacting with the characters that you have created, your own, when you interact with the other players, you end up with much more depth. There was a moment where we all ended up playing each other, like bits of each other's clans, because it was just easy to do it that way. And that was really fun because it was like, I'm going to play a lunatic in this particular faction, or I'm going to play someone who's terrified.
And if you've been playing for a while with each other, you've got that essence of what's what with the families, don't you? So
Power of the Apocalypse, I think, is a really good system, but I don't think it's a great system for new players because it's a very you get a very specific idea of how role-playing games work, and you end up becoming a bit more there's too much at once, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, before I very briefly answer that question, I'm just going to just jump in it again because as John Coxon said, FFG Star Wars is the best RPG system. Sorry, got too excited. I'm actually playing the West End Games D6 revised at the moment, and the longest campaign I ran was with D20. So, but I like what they do with the dice, so I'll probably agree when I get round to it. But yeah, that's the whole thing. I only jumped in because John's there's a link here, which is I think why which might be why I'm on this panel, and it's always a story I like telling. So the Student Role Playing Nationals, when I was GMing Star Wars, and the first time I met John was as one of my players. So there. Right, I'm going to shut up.
I play the FFG system. What I love about the FFG system is it rewards failure.
Yes.
So you can roll a failure, but successfully.
What does FFG stand for?
Fantasy Flight Games.
Right, yeah.
So like you've got two different sets of dice, and one is how well you do it, and the other one is how much style you do it with. So you can fail with style, or you can succeed badly.
Okay.
Or you can be a complete disaster, or you can be a total success. I was very lucky enough to do a one-shot, which is, if you listen to the Force Majeure podcast, he said, quickly plugging, over the Christmas, we're doing one that's based loosely on Blues Brothers. And as our guests, we have the regular cast, and we also have Adrian Tchaikovsky and Paul Foxcroft, who's like he's the GM comedian guy that you see on the Comic Relief stuff. He's that guy, Questing Time guy. And I laughed so hard I almost fell over. But that's a lot of that was a system that lent itself to that sort of improv, hilarious failure, incredible success. Sorry, I just thought I'd do a plug.
Right. Well, yeah, I was going to say we've adapted a bit of that with the older system as much as we can, and that there's always a complication with if you roll a 1, which I think is where it kind of evolved from. But your complication, well, yeah. I mean, I think it's like the initial botch thing whereby it's supposed to be a sort of big critical failure, but there's no reason that you can't do that in a way that's actually something entertaining that goes on, and you can roll again because of the way the dice work. You can roll like a huge success and still have a thing that doesn't quite go to the to the plan that the player had read out at the time. And the GM doesn't even have to tell you what it is. It'd be like, no, that worked really well. Here's a description, and then an hour later, when some bounty hunters turn up looking for something you have in your bag that you didn't know you had when you did that. Oh, congratulations! You show them the one.
I think, kind of going on a tangent, one of the things I like about this panel, one of the things that kind of worries me about where role-playing games are going is that a lot of the role-playing games that you can see that are popular on the internet are a very specific type, which is where you have voice actors or people who are good at a specific thing doing a role, and like that is not the only fruit, if you see what I mean. And there are examples like out there. Ox Venture is a bunch of people just messing around. And like they ignore the rules constantly and just have a giggle. Questing Time is another one where improv comedians are just giggling all the way through, and the difference between the two is that Ox Venture ignores the rules proudly and gleefully, whereas Questing Time uses the rules to extract gags from the players constantly. And they're two different approaches that are nothing like High Rollers, Critical Role, all of that sort of thing. And I watch stuff like that and I go, yes, every single type of role-playing play is out there. You just never, if you get into it, never feel like you're doing it wrong. You can't do it wrong.
You just kind of do, don't you? It whatever the thing is, you do the thing.
You just have to be ready to not be precious about things.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying too hard to make everything great for your character, you're neglecting something else.
It's also, this is also nice and relevant to another thing we've got in the bar, which it's also about playing with others. Can you give others space to play as well? And I think we're answering this now. But yeah, go on, Del.
Oh yeah, no, just like you have to have that holistic idea of, is what you're about to do working for everybody, or is it working for yourself? Like, you have to leave ego behind. You have to be ready for things to go wrong and accept when they do. Like that's, I have to say, I know obviously my only frame of reference is Good Society, but that is one of the things in the book and in the information, is just like, things are going to go wrong for your character, and you just have to deal with that, and you need to be ready for it and actually plan for it. Like, and so I was quite careful with mine, like trying to think of someone that they could be a goodie or they could be a baddie. It could be seen as good intentions or bad intentions, just so that essentially it opened that story up, because it'd be really boring if everything went well all the time.
I think different people have fun in different ways, and that's a revelation that took longer than it should have. When I was like, if older Ed could have a conversation with younger Ed playing games, I remember years ago I used to go to a regular LARP system, and there was one guy who was playing. He was playing like an archaeologist scholar type, and he'd always be in the thick of it. Sorry, like Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones. He was playing it with. He had the whip as well, and it was LARP safe, so it was like really short. So like he would like punch people with his whip, because you can't have a LARP safe whip. That's ridiculous. But you can have like the
just file numbers off that name for licensing reasons. Yeah,
you can have like a circle of rubber that looks like a whip, and then you can use that. And he had like a version of a spell that he used, and a bunch of that sort of thing. But he very rarely did anything. It's the thing. He'd be there, and he didn't really interact with the rest of us, but he was always there. And then we found his journal, and his journal was detailed about, and like he'd nailed most of the characters as well. And what I realized was this gamer was quite shy, really into it.
Yeah.
But and I was like, "Are you?" I used to think, "Are we sure he's having fun?" Yeah, no, he absolutely is. Just let him do his thing, And the guy running the event made sure that he was having fun and knew about all of this. And and the player eventually went, "Oh, by the way, I've got this blog," and we were like, "Oh, this is adorable. This is brilliant." We get to see the journal of this character. And that kind of like turned something on in my brain where it's like, different people have different fun, and don't yuck anyone's yum. Don't, unless their version of fun is to disrupt other players, which is out of order. Then let them have their fun.
It's the same as yeah. I mean, it's the same sort of principle as people learning in different ways how to do things, isn't it? That's why, and also during a LARP's a good example, because it's a large because there's generally a sizable number of people interacting with various things, and they can't as a rule often interact with everything that there is to interact with, and also they can't. Also, you've picked whatever you've picked the things that you're good at, the things that you're less good at, the things that you enjoy doing, the enemies you're likely to, etc., etc. So one person's playing Indiana Jones, and one other person's playing a computer hacker somewhere. They're not necessarily compatible skills, but they're going to need each other at some point, and it just goes on. This goes on around the thing. I also, as far as tabletop goes, I find this is a bit easier to handle when I am GMing or storytelling, because my thing is that if I want to tell a story, I know it's collab. I've got a rough idea of how I reckon it's gonna go down, but everybody there is everyone sat around my table, virtual or otherwise, is still is still a critical part of what's going on in the story. It's similar with you know, and they're interacting with your story in completely different ways. It's, you know, whether they're succeeding or not with skill checks on roles. This is all still part of the story. How they actually approached whether to make that role in the first place is a huge part of the story. Did you know they were even going to think to do that? And you write down a list of 5 or 6 things to do, and they will choose option 7.
Lot taught me to set character goals, and it doesn't matter the format of the story that you're telling, or if you're tabletop role playing, or if you're the GM, or if you're a character. On one of my favorite goals to set is be someone's enemy, be someone's villain, and the look of glee when someone hunted me down and murdered me. I've had that twice, and it's such a joy because they were like, "I'm sorry, mate," and I was like, "No, you don't understand. I win." You know, as an Ed, I win because like I have set my story to this, and they were like, "Oh, I had so much fun. You were such a bastard," and you're like, "Thank you." You know, that's what I wanted. I wanted to be the one, the character that you had to nail.
And the fabulous thing is, you can set a goal as a player as simple as, I just need to make it to tomorrow. That can be the all you need, you know, or I just came here because, you know, this because the scenario was that you've invited me to this palace where by they have some equivalent of the world's greatest Michelin chef, and I've just come here to have the food. Everything else that goes on around that's a bonus, but
it's that classic thing when you're building a character or a villain. It's like when you create a genie and you put in you have a genie that's granted wishes, and you have a bit where it's like you just put a note saying no one has ever asked the genie if it's okay. And then if the players do, then you know once you've got that one note, you can build a character around it.
You can build an entire season plot around that.
But it's just little notes and little things that you can just put together.
I mean, I'm running. This Star Wars game I've temporarily taken over running. I'm running for a small child, which I haven't done very often. But lockdown being what it is, it's nice for everyone to have something to look forward to for a few hours. So I try and make sure that one of the pair of murderous little Ewoks gets to do fun stuff, like, you know, bounce around vents in a Star Destroyer like we did this weekend. It's just, but yeah.
I ran 9 Worlds. I've ran some kids games for family kids, which has been a lot of fun. The D&D Essentials kit is great, by the way, for that sort of thing, because it's very straightforward. But I ran a game of D&D where a bunch of kids all decided that they wanted to adopt an owlbear, and that was it. They ignored the plot, and they wanted a pet owlbear, and that was their adventure, and that was fun. And
that's brilliant, though, and isn't that a joyful thing about children? Is that
he's not an owl, but
cute bear though. Like, children are just so wonderful, and they do that with everything. You're like, okay, so this is a story, and they're like, oh, lovely. Is there a Triceratops in that story? And you're like, well, there wasn't. And they're like, there was though. And you're like, oh yeah, okay, sorry, 100%. And so I just think the idea of an interactive game with that level of just like, oh no, but you've forgotten the blah blah. Like, oh yeah, no, I have forgotten the blah blah. Let's roll and see what happened to the blah blah.
But I've also ran it where they were the most vicious, and these are like 8 and 9-year-olds, and they were the most vicious gang of murder hobos. They just went through this gang of goblins, and they were just like, right, okay, but they kept going back to the mayor for sweeties, and the mayor was like, okay, well, we have other problems you can solve, and it was just like, And like the more and more like distressed the villagers became by the fact that these were like a rampaging horde essentially. But the kids had a great time.
They sound a bit like the Mac Feagle. Just like, can
Oh,
chaos help this problem?
So yeah, so it's like, you know, they're not all heartwarming stories, but it's always fun because they are, you know, because they'll surprise you in every single turn.
Yeah,
But I've never had a bad experience running games for kids. But you have to be really careful that everyone has a voice, more so than with adults.
The most frequent question I ever ask when I will ever ask when running at the end of a session is, "Did you have fun?" Because if the answer is no, I need to know why, so I can make sure we avoid doing that thing for whatever reason, and see if we can get the answer to be yes next week. That's how it is.
But yeah,
Was it fun? No. Why? Needs more. What about this? Needs an eternal spiral slide.
That's all right. That's coming. It wasn't. It's
more explosions, more spaceship battles, more sea battles, more like you can always pull. I did have a moment in one of the campaigns I'm running where the players just said something, and I was like, "Well, that's where I was going with that." But now I'm going to do it more so. If you see what I mean, I was like, I was hinting at this, and they just went, "Oh, it's going to be like this," and I'm like, "Yeah, no. Do you know what? Let's nail it to the mast."
Some players want directed by Michael Bay. Some players want directed by Catherine Bigelow. It's just, you know, it's one of those. It's one of those things you just keep an eye on.
There's a comment.
If chaos can't fix it, a fireball will. Well, unless you're, you know, doing this on in a gaseous scenario, in which case it'll fix something.
No, fireball's great. You don't need the knock spell, fireball.
Yeah.
You don't need prestidigitation, fireball.
I'm cold, fireball. Yeah, it's multi-purpose, awesome.
Again, there's a great example on the questing time stream, which is not my stream, by the way. I just really like it. Where there's a character who tries to firebolt his way out of plummeting to his doom, and then someone's like, "But you've got Featherfall. Like you've literally you have the parachute spell. Why are you throwing fireballs to try and lift themselves up?" You're like, but don't tell the player. Don't backseat it. Don't just go. Just watch them as they plummet through the ground, because that's all. But yeah. There's powered by Fiasco. Fiasco's great as well.
Yes. There's one above that as well, isn't there? Let's just see. Oh yes, I know a lot of people like me who are scared of RPGing without clear rules, but really enjoy when you can just embody character. I'm trying to adjust to designs that are light on rules but strong on guide rails that naturally channel players into doing fun things.
Anything by Grant Howitt. That's 2 pages long.
There you go.
Like Grant does stuff like Honey Heist, which is where you're a bunch of bears who want to steal all the honey from Honeycomb. The problem is that you're a bear. You can't drive. You don't know what knock is. You have no opposable thumbs. You're a bear.
So the great thing is, which we know from various videos, is that it doesn't stop bears getting into cars. It doesn't stop bears impersonating T-800s and going into police stations and robbing the vending machines. This is all there.
He did one which is inspired by Warhammer 40,000, where you play a Space Marine. It's like with the serial numbers filed off so he doesn't get sued. But the idea is that you play a Space Marine. And it's like things that you were good at: murdering aliens, causing war, things that you were bad at, social interaction. Scenario: you're at a dinner party. You must not cause a diplomatic incident. And it's like an hour-long game where you're all just sitting there going, don't murder the mortals.
But now in my head, I want there also at the dinner party to be a bear who just is trying to get the honey. No one will know.
You can create amazing stories on that.
There's a story that I've read about but not played, which is the legend of Sir Barrington, which is someone who played a bear with high enough charisma and a high enough bluff to pretend to be a knight. And it's just like, that person's a bear. That's horribly rude. How dare you?
My helmet's stuck.
With a moustache.
Don't lose the touch.
I've got.
Huh?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. I was about to say, I was like, I think we might be running out of time. And the little message is just like, you're running out of time.
Yeah. Well, so I suppose, yeah. Any more questions?
Yes, very good.
I was going to say one of the games I'm currently playing, one of the players has decided to play a non-verbal character. He's got telepathy, but he's non-verbal. So he's essentially playing Stitch from Lilo and Stitch. And it's just so much fun because it's like, what's your name? Gak. What are you doing? Gak, 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 gak. And they're like, but like everyone knows what he's doing, what he's playing because the archetype is so easy.
I love stuff like that though. And I love sometimes as well is when you have those sorts of moments that actually it changes your perception of other things that you know. Like my character, the second meeting, sorry, we're still on the first chapter. But like the second meeting, just all of a sudden I was just like, oh my God, my character's Spectrum. And they would just say, oh yeah, like everything about him, he's 100% autistic spectrum condition. And then it literally, my head just went, reread Pride and Prejudice and understand that Darcy is Spectrum. I was like, my mind is blown how I view characters in these stories that I know so well and have like been part of my life for so long changed. I was like, actually, yeah, so many of the awkward characters in Jane Austen are literally awkward because they find the social aspects of life difficult, but they generally are okay with like the etiquette and the rules of society because they were very firm. It's the literal discussion where they fall apart into like a mess. And I was just like, that makes so much sense. And for me anyway, now for those characters to be like, actually, yeah, like obviously autism isn't something that suddenly existed now. So it's been here forever.
Yeah, no, the world's worst proposal makes perfect sense. If you don't realize that if you don't have the facility or the order of function, sorry, I have to be very careful because I don't want to, but if your order of function is such that it's like that, yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah, I need you to understand that I know that proposing to you is very silly because this, and this, and let me insult you a little bit. But yes, marriage.
World's worst possible proposal.
I could offer you a proposal, or here is a rubbish bin on fire. Yeah.
Goodness. Your game sounds amazing, I have to say.
It's so good. I love it so much.
I've not come across it before.
Brilliant. Because sorry, Russell.
I was going to say I'd not come across that before until you mentioned.
Yeah, I hadn't until Emma brought it up, and it's really because on the first page as well. One of the first decisions you make as a group is whether you're turning gender off. So we decided to. So it basically means that women can inherit. Women can like essentially, yeah. So women can have the same status that men can have, and that we didn't need to kind of keep it heteronormative. And that's again just really opened certain stories up that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise, and especially the idea of like women being able to work. Like my character's sister's in the clergy. Like it's so good. I love it.
I think it's a crucial part now with role-playing games as well, is that you should feel free to change any of the sliders you want. Or I always use the example from LARP, which is, so I played a samurai badger. I don't always play badgers. I played a samurai badger in a LARP game, and people were like, "Oh, but you're inspired by Edo period Japan. You should be." It's like, no, There were no 7-foot-tall samurai badges in Japan ever. We can do whatever we want. This is a game within the rules of the game. D&D have been making interesting changes in that regard, but we're running out of time. D&D
Yeah,
will be
I think this is probably a good time for us to.
It is. It's a nice point as well. Like RPG helps change. We're all tolerant of people.
Yeah. So, do we want to plug anything? I mean, collectively, I presume the obvious thing would be Brave New Words, but.
Brave New Words podcast, read Starburst magazine, Force Majeure podcast.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's been nice to see you and have a proper chat.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this little chat that we would have possibly had in the bar anyway. But somebody thrust cameras on us and said, "Hey, can you do this as a panel?" So here we are. So yeah, much appreciated. I've got a meeting now. I've got to dash off to, but I will hop in the Discord if people want to natter about stuff. And
I hope everyone's had a really good con.
Yeah.
Have a nice weekend.
Have fun. Take care and stay